Stargate wasn't just another alien movie. An Egyptology student sued for $100 million claiming the script was stolen from him. Jaye Davidson demanded $1 million, hoping they'd say no. They said yes. And 90% of the massive crowds were plastic mannequins.
Sand everywhere.
These are 15 facts about the film that mainstreamed ancient aliens theory, nearly destroyed a $100,000 camera lens with liquid nitrogen, and launched a franchise the director never wanted. 1. The $100 million theft lawsuit shortly after Stargate was released, an Egyptology student and teacher named Omar Zudi filed a massive lawsuit against the creators. He claimed he had submitted a nearly identical script to the studio years earlier. Zudi's treatment allegedly included the same core concept, that the Egyptian pyramids were landing pads for alien spacecraft, and that the gods of ancient Egypt were extraterrestrial beings. The case was so compelling and well documented that it never went to trial. It was settled out of court for an undisclosed sum, all parties bound by non-disclosure agreements. The quiet settlement fueled persistent rumors that the entire Stargate mythology was actually stolen intellectual property rather than an original creation. To this day, no one knows exactly how much money changed hands, or what evidence Zudi presented that made the studio settle so quickly. 2. A Jaye Davidson's $1 million sabotage. This one's brilliant. Jaye Davidson, who played the alien god Ra, had become an overnight sensation after his shocking performance in The Crying Game. He absolutely hated the sudden fame and attention. When he was offered the role of Ra in Stargate, he didn't want to do it. He wanted to disappear from Hollywood and never act again. So Davidson came up with what he thought was a foolproof plan. He demanded $1 million for the role, an absurd sum for a supporting part in 1993. He fully expected the studio to laugh and walk away. They didn't. They said yes instantly. Davidson was trapped. He spent the entire production in a miserable mood, refusing to remove his uncomfortable jewelry and elaborate costumes between takes, barely speaking to the cast and crew. His sullen, detached performance actually worked perfectly for playing a bored, immortal alien tyrant. Sometimes the best performances come from actors who are genuinely suffering. 3. The 16,000 Mannequin Army. The production budget couldn't afford to hire 16,000 human extras for the massive scenes where the enslaved citizens of Abydos bow down before Ra in the desert. So the production team bought thousands of cheap department store mannequins, dressed them in robes and headdresses, strategically placed them in the distant background of wide shots. If you watch those scenes carefully and know what to look for, you can tell that roughly 90% of Ra's subjects are literally plastic dolls standing motionless in the sand. Only the people in the foreground and middle distance are real actors. The masses stretching to the horizon are inanimate props. It's a brilliant, low-budget trick that completely sells the illusion of a massive population living under tyranny. 4. The liquid nitrogen disaster. The shimmering, rippling puddle effect inside the Stargate wasn't created with CGI or simple visual effects. It was achieved practically by blasting high-pressure liquid nitrogen into a massive tank of water. The violent chemical reaction created the otherworldly, undulating surface that the characters walk through when they travel between worlds. But the effect was incredibly dangerous to film. The reaction was so explosive and unpredictable that it nearly shattered the reinforced glass tank holding the water. It almost destroyed the $100,000 camera lens positioned just a few feet away. The crew had to wear specialized thermal protective gear and respirators just to stand near the active Stargate during filming. The nitrogen gas displaced all the oxygen in the immediate area. Serious suffocation hazard, spectacularly reckless. But the result looks more real than any CGI could have created in 1994. 5. James Spader's honest insult. James Spader, who played Dr. Daniel Jackson, famously admitted in interviews that he only took the role because he desperately needed a paycheck. He told director Roland Emmerich directly to his face that he found the script awful, unreadable, and full of logical holes that made no sense. Spader didn't hide his contempt for the material. Emmerich was initially furious about the actor's attitude, but ironically, Spader's genuine confusion and frustration with the plot made his character feel like a real, overwhelmed academic who's in way over his head. Two actors in this movie gave great performances because they hated being there. That's either a production disaster or a miracle. 6. The Mastadge Dog-Horses. The giant, shaggy beasts of burden that the people of Abydos use for transportation weren't puppets, animatronics, or CGI creatures. They were actually two enormous Clydesdale horses covered in multiple layers of fake fur, fiberglass humps, and prosthetic horns, transformed into alien animals. The costumes were so heavy, hot, and restrictive that the horses could only work for about 10 minutes at a time before they started overheating. They had to be uncostumed and cooled down with giant industrial fans. The animal handlers were constantly monitoring the horses' vital signs to make sure they didn't collapse from heat exhaustion in the brutal desert temperatures. Elaborate, expensive, but the physical weight and movement of real animals made the creatures feel more believable than any puppet could have achieved. 7. Recycled Total Recall architecture. To save money on Stargate's relatively modest $55 million budget, the production repurposed several massive architectural elements and desert set pieces that had been built for the 1990 Arnold Schwarzenegger film Total Recall. The Egyptian-themed ruins, stone platforms, and background structures were constructed on an enormous scale in the Yuma Desert of Arizona. The production got these massive sets for a fraction of what it would have cost to build them from scratch. Most audiences never realized they were watching recycled props from another movie. That's a clever example of how Hollywood studios share resources and recycle expensive construction to stretch their budgets. Sometimes the best production design is just knowing what already exists in a warehouse somewhere. 8. The Ancient Language Lesson. The Abydonian language spoken by the enslaved people in the film isn't gibberish or made-up alien dialogue. It's actually a reconstructed version of Middle Egyptian, the language spoken during Egypt's Middle Kingdom period around 2000 BCE. The production hired a professional Egyptologist to translate portions of the script into phonetically accurate Middle Egyptian, then worked with a dialogue coach to teach the actors how to pronounce the ancient words correctly. James Spader and Jaye Davidson had to spend weeks learning the proper pronunciation and cadence to make their conversations sound linguistically consistent. It's an incredible level of detail that 99% of the audience would never notice. But it gives the film an authenticity and weight that generic alien languages could never provide. That real people actually spoke these words thousands of years ago makes the entire premise feel slightly less absurd. 9. The Anubis Mask Nightmare. The mechanical helmets worn by the Horus and Anubis guards weren't just static props. They were fully functional, remotely controlled masks with moving jaws and glowing eyes, operated by off-camera puppeteers using radio controls. The helmets were so heavy and poorly balanced that the actors wearing them would experience severe neck pain and muscle seizures after just 20 minutes of filming. The internal motors and servos also made a constant loud whirring noise that made it impossible for the actors to hear their cues or the director's instructions. Multiple takes were ruined because actors couldn't tell when they were supposed to move or speak. The production had to develop an elaborate system of hand signals and physical taps to communicate with the masked performers. Technical nightmare. But the guards look appropriately menacing and inhuman. The cost was just transferred to the actors' necks. 10. Mainstreaming ancient aliens. In 1994, the ancient astronaut theory, the idea that extraterrestrial beings visited Earth in prehistoric times and influenced human civilization, was considered fringe pseudoscience, believed only by conspiracy theorists and UFO enthusiasts. Stargate was one of the first major Hollywood blockbusters to mainstream this concept, specifically proposing that the Egyptian pyramids were landing pads for alien spacecraft, that the gods worshipped by ancient cultures were actually advanced beings from other worlds. The film's success helped legitimize these ideas in popular culture. Within a decade, the History Channel was airing shows like Ancient Aliens that treated the same theories as plausible historical speculation. Stargate didn't invent the ancient astronaut hypothesis, but it packaged it into an entertaining story that made millions of people take the concept seriously for the first time. The film fundamentally changed how mainstream audiences think about ancient history and the possibility of extraterrestrial contact. For better or worse. 11. The 120-degree desert storm filming in Yuma, Arizona during the summer was an absolute nightmare. Daily temperatures regularly hit 120 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to cause heat stroke, dehydration, and equipment failures. Then, in the middle of production, a massive sandstorm swept through the location. It buried the 22-foot-tall Stargate prop under several feet of sand, simultaneously destroyed multiple expensive cameras that couldn't be protected quickly enough. The crew had to spend 2 full days excavating the gate from the sand dune it had been buried under, manually digging out tons of sand in brutal heat just to resume filming. The extreme conditions contributed to the authentic, exhausted, desperate look of the actors in the desert sequences. They weren't acting when they looked hot, miserable, and ready to collapse. They genuinely were. 12. In the nuclear logic hole. The military's plan to send a nuclear bomb through the Stargate and destroy whatever's on the other side, regardless of whether it poses an actual threat, was a deliberate reflection of 1990s Cold War anxiety and American foreign policy. Director Roland Emmerich wanted to show that the military's first instinct is always destruction and overwhelming force, contrasted against Daniel Jackson's desire for communication, understanding, and peaceful contact. The entire plot hinges on this philosophical conflict: those who want to destroy what they don't understand versus those who want to learn from it. It's a surprisingly political message for a blockbuster adventure film. One of the reasons Stargate resonated with audiences who were tired of jingoistic military propaganda masquerading as entertainment. The film argues that curiosity and empathy are more valuable than weapons, even when facing the unknown. 13. The censored original opening. There's a legendary deleted opening sequence that was cut from the theatrical release. This scene took place in 1928 during the original archaeological excavation that discovered the buried Stargate. It was filmed in a much more graphic Indiana Jones-style adventure format. The sequence allegedly showed the guardians of the gate being discovered in their tomb. Ancient Egyptian warnings carved into the walls explaining exactly why the Stargate had been buried and sealed away. Warnings that the modern characters would later ignore with catastrophic consequences. The scene was cut because test audiences felt it made the movie feel too much like a period piece. It slowed down the momentum of getting to the alien world. But its removal also eliminated crucial context about why the ancient Egyptians feared the Stargate enough to bury it for thousands of years, leaving a narrative hole that some viewers found frustrating. 14. The franchise that wasn't supposed to exist. Director Roland Emmerich originally conceived Stargate as the first installment of a trilogy of theatrical films. He planned to explore the mythology of the Gate and reveal a vast network of ancient alien civilizations. But after the film was released, Emmerich lost the rights to the franchise in a legal and financial battle with the studio. He was never able to make the sequels he'd planned. Instead, MGM turned Stargate into the long-running television series Stargate SG-1, which ran for 10 seasons and spawned multiple spin-off shows. Emmerich has publicly stated that he hates the TV series and believes it ruined his original vision of what the Stargate mythology was supposed to be. The irony? The TV franchise became far more successful and culturally influential than Emmerich's film ever was. Sometimes losing creative control leads to something better than what the original creator envisioned. 15. Kurt Russell's Cigarette Rebellion. Kurt Russell was supposed to quit smoking on camera as part of his character's arc, a soldier learning to care about life again. But Russell, a real-life smoker at the time, hated the anti-smoking messaging. He thought it was preachy. He convinced Emmerich to let him keep smoking throughout the film as a sign of O'Neill's death wish and depression. The cigarettes became a subtle character detail that showed O'Neill's suicidal mindset. He's a man who doesn't care if he lives or dies, which is why the military chose him for a one-way mission through the Stargate in the first place. Russell won the argument. The character is better for it. Let me know in the comments which secret surprised you most. If you want more deep dives into the movies that built our modern mythology, hit subscribe. See you in the next one.